I'm Steph from My Driver Classic, and today we are looking at the Nissan Prairie. Now this example is from 1985 and has the 1.8 engine in, and it's very much a lesser spotted vehicle. I mean, when was the last time you saw one of these out on the road? But this was the world's first multi-purpose vehicle. It was meant to do everything. Well, unless you were looking for a sports car to have a bit of a life crisis in, then it wasn't really going to do that. But in terms of getting you around, being the vehicle that you can do everything with, this was meant to be it. Now in today's video, we're going to have a look around the outside. We're going to have a look at that beautiful pillarless design that the car was so famous for, and I'm going to take you out on a test drive. This will not disappoint, and I think this might be one of the most exciting videos we shoot in 2026. So come on, let's go and look at the Nissan Prairie. The Prairie hit the world in a very different place to where we are today. If you think about when it came out in the 1982 NEC Motor Show, it came across cars like the Ford Sierra, the Audi 100 C3 and the Rover SD1 Vitesse. Now, if you think about it, this was a time when the choice of cars for your family looked very different. Kind of unlike now, really. I feel like so many things just look very samey. And the offering from Nissan was quite different to what other manufacturers were doing. And also it's a very different era for Nissan, because they'd gently made decent inroads in the UK in the 70s, and now they were looking to fulfill the desires not just of the home market but the European market. Now, launching 2 years before the Renault got the Espace into the market, this car provided families with a vehicle which promised to do it all. And it was certainly something different to the usual minibuses and estate cars which had been favoured by larger families, and with a 1.8 and a 1.5 engine option, it was designed for practicality. For example, the Toyota Space Cruiser, also on sale at the same period of time, was offering, well, not quite as much as this, because with this you got 2 sliding doors instead of 1, you got a much lower loading lip, a low floor and pillarless side entrance, and to load from the floor to the lip it was 17 inches. And in fact, when Nissan went out to market, they boasted it was suitable for families needing masses of space for holiday luggage, room for all the DIY needs of the typical family man, space for an antiques dealer, which, look, as we know, Volvo estates are really for those antiques dealers. I couldn't see one in one of these. And probably the most frequent of all the uses, mums with prams and plenty of shopping. Now, as quickly as the Prairie arrived, so too did the competition. This was a very different era. You've got things like the aforementioned Espace, the Mitsubishi Space Wagon. Now these names might be more familiar now, especially the Espace. Everyone knows what that is, right? But the Prairie did something a little bit more profound and made its own space in history with the help of an engineer. And the engineer in question was Rod Brotherwood, who was entrusted by a neighbour, John Lambert, to convert the vehicle to take his wheelchair. So they did lots of bits and pieces, but it was a real big step up, because previously the disabled pilot former pilot had used a Bedford with a tail lift. But look, let's be honest with ourselves, that's far from ideal, and really it's not acceptable. And so the conversion was the beginning of what we now know as the wheelchair accessible vehicle, which has seen Brotherwood achieve great strides of progress in the field, but it all started with a humble Prairie. Now if you think about it, it's quite remarkable really, because you look at the early 70s and you've still got Invercars out on the road, and then you look at something like this, which has been turned into a wheelchair accepting vehicle. I think that is such incredible progress. But what did the Prairie offer? Because it wasn't just for those with mobility issues. Well, you've got the 2 aforementioned engine options, both paired with a 5-speed box. Both options were fitted with electronic ignition, and the engine was fitted transversely to maximise that room. But that's not a new idea. We see them do it in things like the Mini as well. The car was well sized, being a similar size externally to a Triumph Acclaim, making it really easy to park, but boasted internal dimensions which were quite enormous, because it was 92 inches long, 58 inches wide and 47 inches high. For my metric friends out there, that's roughly 2.3 metres by 1.47 by 1.19. Now the turning circle is around 32 feet, which is what's stated in the brochure, and that roughly equates to 9 9.75 metres, and it's designed to be able to get in and out of tight spaces, which was partially enabled by the new steering coupling. The steering on this is rack and pinion, and suspension is fully independent with coil springs to front and torsion bars to rear. A rear anti-roll bar is also fitted to give the saloon car handling feel. Brakes are power assisted on this with vented discs to front to enable really effective stopping. Now look, overall, despite being on sale for a number of years in the UK, in my opinion, the car didn't hit as it deserved to, and as it really should have. Now, naysayers will say, oh, well, they were known for being rotten. Yeah, people write that on every video that I do. Every car in the past was known for having corrosion problems. That's why a lot of them probably aren't here. Now look, I don't think that's the reason it didn't resonate. I think personally it was the right car at the wrong time, which we see time and time again throughout history. Nowadays with mobility schemes, and I think a growing desire for smaller vehicles which can do more, I think this would be a far bigger hit today than it was when it first came out. But let's have a closer look at that interior. Coming inside here, if that pillarless door design didn't win you over when we were looking around the outside, well, hopefully the interior does, because this truly is advertised as the world's first multi-purpose car. I think that it really lives up to it as you jump inside. If for nothing else, the level of storage, because you haven't just got this glove box over here, you've got this space here, there's a space in front of it, there's a space down there, there's a space here. Goodness me, you are spoilt for choice. You've also got what I would like to describe as the world's most ineffective door pockets. They are so slim, you're not really getting anything inside those at all. You probably get more in your actual pockets on your trousers. But anyway, very small complaint about what I consider to be one of the most interesting cars that we have ever had on the channel. Now, coming into the centre here, you've got all your heating controls. Now I want you to listen to this blower, because the only way I can describe it is absolutely ferocious. Although I love complaining, and be it from me to complain, because that immediately warmed the car up. We had it on a few minutes and it was warming us up a treat. So bravo Nissan, because I love 1980s and 1990s heaters where it just seems to be a race to have the warmest car. Coming down from there, you've got a clock, you've got a cigar lighter, you've got your handbrake, which is pull and turn to take off, and then you come down into this Mitsubishi radio, and then you've got your 5-speed box. Now the 5-speed box was on both the 1.5 and the 1.8 models, so just worth pointing that out. Coming in front of us here, you've got a very simple layout. So you've got a selection of warning lights towards the bottom, but essentially it's all just made up of that speedo, your indicator or your turn signals, as some of you will know them, your fuel gauge and your temperature gauge. I really like that very clean layout. I'm one for an analog dash myself. I'd like to know if you are as well, but for me that just hits the spot completely, especially when we've got so many speed cameras. It's just nice to see that. Now coming over on the left hand side here, you've got your windscreen wipers, and you've got your indicators and lights on the right hand side. Now it is worth mentioning that you may have spotted that we have a rear wiper. The switch for that is just there next to the fog lights, and then you've got your heated screen button over on the right hand side. So all very simple, but everything you need is right there. Now I really like the design of the steering wheel and the doors and the door cards as well. So first of all, the steering wheel, I like that two-piece and the way it's designed. I like the fact it says Prairie. For me, it really ticks the boxes in feeling quite special, which maybe wasn't the first intention of the designers, but I don't know, it just has a real pull to it. Now what I like about these seats and the door cards is that they've been designed in a way that you just don't see on cars of this era every day. Is that you've got that velour trim, which yeah, is pretty standard, but then inside it you've got this, I think, judging by the feel of it, I don't think it's leather, I think it's vinyl trim running through. And what they then do to marry that interior up is they follow that through into the door cards, and then you've got chrome window winders. I just think that it feels like a really thoughtfully put together design, and I love it. And it feels very spacious inside here as well. So we talk a lot about that room when we were walking around, and I was telling you about how those back seats, which I've not tried to do because I'm sometimes a little bit nervous when it's a car that's not been used in a while and the owner hasn't tested it themselves yet, but those seats in the back flip forwards and they flip back. And if you look at a brochure at the time, it says, oh well, you can make yourself up a double bed and sleep inside. But because the owner hasn't tested them and because they're a little bit stiff, I haven't done it because I don't want to be the one to break it. But I really like that. Now, you can have all the space in the world, but if you don't have the right layout inside, it doesn't feel spacious. And something that really adds to that is this sunroof. Now I really like this. I'm not sure if this is a dealership add-on or it's something that would have been in the car, but again, it just brings light inside the cabin, and it feels so spacious. And I like the fact as well that it's not just about the space, it's about the comfort as well, because these seats are so well upholstered and you've got that thick pile carpet down there as well. For me, Nissan have ticked all the boxes with this. But what does it sound like? Well, remember, we've got that 1.8 inside here, which gives us 90 brake horsepower. I'm going to start it up. And if you're wondering what else they were using it in the range, they used it in the Bluebird and the Sylvia as well. I've driven this down the road, right, and there were no knocks or rattles. And when you start it up, it's completely silent inside. It's a sign of such a well-made vehicle. Now let's hear it from the outside and then I'll take you for a drive. Right, let's go on an adventure. Tell you what, the brakes are good on this as you come round, and it's so light. The steering is, I mean, when it's at slow speeds it is quite heavy, probably heavier than you think it might be, but it really isn't that bad. Now I'm going to try and see as we come through if I can get up into fifth gear for you. I managed it on the first take of the test drive, but you can see there the gear change on this is, well, the only thing I can really describe it as is it's just like every other Nissan gearbox of stuff that I've driven from this era. So one of my friends owned a Nissan Bluebird and she had it for a while, and I borrowed it a few times for different things, and the gearbox feels just exactly like that. Nice and easy to change through, feels very sure where the gears are. You don't feel like, you know, you're staring a pot of jam. It's quite pleasing really, just feels quite exacting. Everything on this feels really precise. I mean, the handling, the steering, you can feel that, you can feel the unevenness in the road coming through the car. That's one thing I will say, but I mean, it looks one of those things, isn't it? The roads aren't exactly pristine. The nice thing about this 1.8 is you barely have to give it anything, and it picks up speed so very quickly, which in today's modern world where everybody's so impatient, it really is to the advantage of the whole driving experience. And we'll try and get up into fifth and show you. It's one of those cars that you don't have to be in a particularly high gear to get up into fifth. There you go. Again, changes through the box so nicely, cruises along this road effortlessly. It's one of those cars that you could do a decent amount of miles in, I think, and not feel fatigued come the end, because these seats are, I would say, pretty well upholstered, not absolutely top. There's some things you get in and you think, blimey, that's really good for the price bracket. For these, they're exactly where I'd expect it, so it provides enough support for your back. They're nice and wide for a big bottom, but they're not overly stuffed, so they're not, you know, they're not armchair comfortable, but they're comfortable enough that you're not going to turn up and need a chiropractor when you get to your destination. In terms of the car, as you drive it along, because you've got all this space around you and you don't have this pillar, it just all feels very roomy, very spacious. You feel like you've got great visibility. That short bonnet means that, because obviously everything being mounted the way it is under the bonnet, that short bonnet means you can see to the end really quickly. Again, it doesn't feel as big as it is when you're inside. It's very deceptive. It's something that I would say. And I'm just cruising along, and all I can think is what are manufacturers doing nowadays, producing these endless boring SUVs? Why haven't we got more stuff like this where it feels so usable? Now, those sliding doors, the first time that I encountered sliding doors in a vehicle was when my family bought a Mark I Kia Sedona, and I remember that my brother was in a car seat, which were pretty big, but even by then in the early 2000s, and it made it really easy to get the car seat in and out. And again, why aren't sliding doors a thing, especially when cars are so big nowadays and car parking spaces are so small? It just really helps get children in and out of the back. It helps disabled people, and that's one thing I would say is if you are a disabled classic car fanatic and you were looking for something a bit quirky that you could really use and enjoy, you would love this, because there is so much room. There's room for a wheelchair, there's room that you can fold seats in and forward and backwards, and you've got those sliding doors so you can get yourself in and out, lots of leg room in the back. I know that obviously it is the strap line that it is sold as the vehicle that does everything, blah blah, but it really does. I think that it offers so many potentials and so many motoring choices for absolutely everyone, that it is a vehicle that would suit so many people. And it's maybe a vehicle that's before its time, because I feel like if this came to market now, there would be so many people that would buy into it. It would make a great motability vehicle, because you can get motoring aids, walking aids inside here, absolutely everything you need. I love it. Now, of course, you're going to say to me, Steph, what don't you like about it? And I think, right, really weirdly, the one thing that I don't like, and you'll have to tell me if this was maybe something that you could have stepped up and put something else in, but that circle feels like a wasted space for me on the dash here and the gauge panel. I feel like that circle, what I would have done is I would have taken the clock out of there and put it into there. That's maybe one of the only things that I would change. Apart from that, I adore it. I just think it's so wonderful. I love the design, I love the space inside, the driving experience, you know, it's not loud inside, and you've got a lot of plastic inside here, and you might be able to hear it at home that none of it is creaking, none of it is rattling. It's just an altogether well appointed vehicle, and I really, really like it. I so wish that Nissan would bring something like this back. Forget the Qashqai, it's boring. Start making stuff like this again. This is great. Let me know what you think in the comments section below. I'm going to take it back now. Thank you so much to Al, who's let me test this, and not only let me test it, but test it in winter so that I could bring it to you and bring a bit of joy to these cold winter months. I know there's a lot of people that won't bring their classics out in winter, and that's fine, but I'm so grateful to Al for doing this. Now, I hope you're all keeping well at home. Let me know how you're getting on, but until next time, take care and drive safely.